Well, hey there, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Let's go. A couple quick things I'll talk more about as the show goes along, as we're having our next station event. Technically, it's our sister station, KLIF, but Brian Kilmeade's coming to town, and that's happening tomorrow at 6 o'clock, Community Beer. Stick around. We'll talk a little bit more about that as the show goes along, but top story of the day nationally is centering around DOGE, and a lot of it is now turning to the reaction to DOGE. And there's been something interesting. Elon Musk went from the darling of the electric vehicle crowd, the global warming crowd, the environmentalism crowd, to now you have people who are selling their Teslas back and bragging about it, or Tesla's getting vandalized. And it's just interesting to see how much a brand can turn around in just such a short period of time because they delve into something as polarizing as politics. My first guest knows a little something about brand building. Craig Crossley on the James Show. Welcome to the James Show. Is there any way that Elon Musk can ever recover and be non-polarizing again, or is this just what he has to live with for the rest of his life?
Well, it's interesting that we talk about it, and regardless of your political affiliation, right? I'm not even here to talk about that. It's just interesting to see what happens with a brand that truly takes their identity from a personal image, right? I mean, you've seen it in different products across the industry, right? But anytime that you have a brand that says it lives and dies on the image of the owner or some other figure, then you're going to be susceptible to these sorts of incidents. I mean, look at what happened with Kanye West years ago, right? I mean, he said what he said, and it completely affected what Adidas did with his brand. Adidas ended up taking a huge loss on his shoe because the image of that shoe brand was so closely tied to that specific individual. You have other cases, that are similar to that. I mean, even if you go down to something with Bud Light. Yeah,
Craig, I was going to bring that up because I think they've done a pretty good job recovering their brand after, they dipped in with Dylan Mulvaney and caught a bunch of criticism. They've since just backed up a dump truck full of money to Shane Gillis, and I've seen them all over the UFC. And I think they even got Kid Rock down for an endorsement or there's been a string of these people that they've obviously tried to make an attempt to recover them.
Well, right. I mean, so, what we look at from a crisis management perspective is you've immediately got to change the narrative and go back to what put you on top. So Tesla has always been known as the innovative brand and leading the industry when it came to EV batteries and just being the cool EV out there. And now all of a sudden the conversation is just about Elon Musk and what you think about his political views. So to your point with Bud Light, it was a miscalculation. Think about it. A larger percentage or a larger majority of your electric vehicle drivers, Tesla drivers, are Democrats. Whether you're a Democrat or Republican, I don't care. But if you look at the numbers and start to look at who your audience is and you're not playing to your audience, you're going to suffer a little bit, right? So what Bud Light did was underestimate the fact that a large percentage of their audience were people that didn't necessarily align with the views that they were taking on. So for them, it was getting back to and repurposing or rebranding, putting themselves out there with that same message that says, we're just a good beer. We're a low-calorie beer. Enjoy our beer. Let's forget about all the other things. And that's where Tesla has got to get back to what put them on top and try to change the narrative from this being a political issue.
Well, I guess the benchmark example that everyone is familiar with in scorching your audience is the new Coke debacle from the mid 80s. Now they could just switch back to the old formula of classic Coke, say, I'm sorry, we didn't mean to tinker with your precious formula. We'll never do it again. But I don't see any way for Elon Musk to go back to the old formula like this. I don't see how this stink ever goes away.
Well, again, we've seen it, right? I mean, for that matter, think about what happened with Tylenol back in the day, right? When 7 people passed away from taking their product because somebody tampered with it and put cyanide in it. Well, they immediately came out and talked about the things that they were doing different, making it tamper-proof and reaffirming to society that they were the leading brand when it came to pain relief. I don't think that Tesla is facing such a battle that they can't recover from it. But again, they've got to change the narrative to impress upon people that they are the leaders in the market when it comes to EVs, and they have better technology and they're innovative. All of those things, as I said, that put them on top. They've just got to get that messaging out there in full force. I agree with you. You know, if you look at Coke, I mean, Coca-Cola is one of the biggest and best marketing machines in the world, right? I mean, they can make you feel a certain way about the sound of opening a can of Coke, for that matter, right? It's just the marketing and promotions that goes behind driving what the message is, but you can't be tone deaf.
All right, Craig Crossley, thank you very much for your time on the James Show. Where do we find you online?
Check us out at thecrosleygroup.com. We are a solid brand strategy and crisis management firm, and we look forward to any opportunities out there.
Thank you very much. Craig Crossley. CrossleyGroup.com. Coming up next, there was a press conference right before lunch today in downtown here in Dallas where some of the city leaders got together and they've all pledged fealty and support to keep the downtown Neiman Marcus flagship store open. And they say things like, you know, everyone agrees that we need this. This is important. This is vital to the vibrancy of downtown. Is it? I don't think so. I'll play some audio from the press conference and then let you decide coming up next. Do we really need to spend taxpayer money to ensure there's the downtown Neiman Marcus flagship? 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Hey there, welcome back to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. If you want to join the big show, 800-288-9227. If you want to meet the big show, we will be at the Brian Kilmeade event tomorrow for our sister station, KLIF. And keep it here because, you know, when you listen to WBAP, there's a lot of events that are going on that we talk about on this show. And I probably should mention them more often, but if you keep listening, there's going to be, like on Thursday, the Dallas County GOP is having a meet the candidates sort of event, but Alan West is going to be there. That's right. Retired Lieutenant Commander Alan West. He's now the president of the Dallas County GOP. And the other co-host of that event is Sarah Gonzalez. She used to be on Texas Scorecard. Now she's on The Blaze, you know, Glenn Beck's outfit, based here out of Dallas. And then Beau French and our friends over at the Tarrant County GOP are having a similar event on Friday. So we're probably going to have him on. Are we having him on Friday, Beau French? Did I even tell you that that's happening and we need to schedule him? Because this kind of counts as me telling you now. Okay. But okay, Alan West will be on Thursday. Let's try and get Beau French on Friday. But we're just trying to keep you abreast of what's going on here in your backyard. Because that's one thing that the show before us can't do and the show after us can't do because they're not from Dallas. The Bongino show or whatever that's going to be in a couple weeks. And then Mark Levin. He's not going to be able to stop down and tell you about these things, but we will here on the James Show. One of the other things that we have here that can't be done by a national show is keeping an eye on what's going on with your tax money that gets sent to Austin. And one of the watchdogs we have is a local state rep. He's out of the Midlothian area is where his district is. His name is Brian Harrison. And he started putting up a scorecard on his Twitter every day where he did it once, and I told him, you got to do this every day. This is so hilarious. And so now he does do it every day. So today's Brian Harrison, State Rep Brian Harrison report card is Texas House 43 days into session as of this morning. What do we have? Number of bills referred, 0. Number of hearings on bills, 0. Number of bills passed, 0. Number of Beyonce resolutions passed, 1. Number of days Beyonce discussed, 2. Number of long weekends, 6. So that's what's going on. They're not taking it very serious. They're not really putting their nose to the grindstone and trying to get you school choice or school vouchers or any sort of the relaxing of the government mandated prepaid school monopoly. There hasn't been any movement on getting your property taxes lower. So we're keeping an eye on that. But my God, how disappointing can they possibly be? Also on the state level, John Cornyn is already opposing a bill with budget cuts in Congress. And I know that's not something that's happening in Austin, but that's a Texas specific issue here. how do we get rid of this dude? I mean, I understand when you get stuck with a bad guy to begin with. And by bad guy, I don't mean he's a bad person or he's evil, but he doesn't quite vote as red as his constituents are. And so, look, anybody can vote someone into office and be surprised about how they act once they get into office. But once he already gets elected, once he's already in there and he makes all these terrible voting decisions, how does he get re-elected? And that's the problem. That's the problem is once a guy gets entrenched in there, it's so hard to get them removed. And we know what the answer is. We have to beat him in the primary. Someone has to primary him out. Why is that so hard? It just goes to show one of the shortcomings of not America, not Texas, any democratic system. The shortcoming of any democratic system is it relies on the depth of knowledge of the everyday voter to go out there and make the decision on way too many people. When you look at everyone that you're supposed to be studying and knowing about, do you know all the candidates for your state rep district? Do you even know who your state rep is, what district you're in? What about for your state senator's seat? What about for your House of Representatives district? What about for your, do you know all the other Senate candidates besides John Cornyn? Can you name any of the other Senate candidates besides John Cornyn, Republican or Democrat? I mean, what are you going to say, Beto? So it's almost an impossible task. It's like when we send them to D.C., the way they've taken on all these other responsibilities. It's an impossible task. John Cornyn is probably a smart guy, but he's not going to be an expert in all the things he has to vote on. He's not an expert in education, but he votes on the Department of Education budget. He's not an expert in the military, but he votes on military matters. He can't be an expert in health and human services and housing and urban development and veterans affairs and education and labor and commerce. And it's an impossible job. So it becomes incumbent on the few of us who do pay attention. Find out when that primary is. Make that a focus and maybe get this dude unseated. But as it sits right now, he doesn't seem to be a fan of codifying so many of the cuts that we think are coming just because DOGE pointed them out. It's not time to declare victory just yet. Coming up next, there's been some interesting hay made of the fact that both Elon Musk and Donald Trump have multiple children with multiple ladies, and how that sort of isn't unusual for the billionaire class. But you know who else it's not unusual for? The lower class. And I'm not making fun of lower class. I should just say my first cousins actually would be my counter example to that. But it's sort of a rich man, poor man. Have you ever done this exercise, the rich man, poor man? What are some things that really rich people and really poor people have in common? This is one of them. They have different children with different wives or different ladies. I don't know if they made honest women out of all of them. But we'll continue that and talk about how complex it can be with Jennifer Hargrave, the Dallas divorce attorney, next on The James Show. If you have any to add to the list of rich man, poor man examples, 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Well, hey there, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome back to The James Show. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Let's go. Well, did you hear President Volodymyr Zelensky is making a trip to the White House? And a lot of people think, well, he's coming to the table. Could this mean that an end to the Ukraine-Russia war might be on said table? David Hamilton from America's Future Series coming back on The James Show. Is that what he's coming in town to negotiate here, an end to the war?
Well, we are negotiating the end of this war, thank God. And you and I have talked about this for a really long time, since almost the beginning of the war, that at some point someone had to talk other than not just shoot, right? So glad to hear that. I mean, basically he's saying, I will resign, and if Ukraine can become part of NATO. But that's been one of the big challenges of this entire thing. This entire thing started because, as I refer to them affectionately, Blinken and Nod encouraged Ukraine to join NATO. That was Anthony Blinken, our Secretary of State. Kamala Harris did the same thing, and so did President Biden. And that was really kind of the start of this thing. A better solution, to my mind, is surprisingly, is that Russia joined NATO and we stop having the need for NATO. Our enemy is China. and we have to join forces with the rest of the world against China. Fighting Russia is a mistake.
Wait, I feel like I missed a step here. Russia joining NATO.
Yeah, actually, Putin suggested that a couple of years ago. He said, "Hey, we'll join NATO."
Okay, so my disconnect here is that I was under the impression NATO, the original alliance, was formed as almost an explicitly anti-Russian coalition.
Absolutely. And his point is we don't have to be enemies. The need for NATO should go away. The battle between Ukraine and Russia is centuries old, et cetera. But this idea that America and continue to fight the Cold War, that is obsolete. Our real enemy is China, and Russia has joined forces with China. Russia isn't really a threat to us, certainly not economically. They have nuclear weapons and they have a relatively ineffective army. We need to stop, spending all of our time, energy, money, et cetera, and perpetuating this war. If you leap to the end, a better solution is let's not only stop all of the hostilities between Ukraine and Russia, but between Russia and Europe, and let us join forces against the common enemy, as I refer to them, Pinky and the Brain, the people who wake up every night trying to figure out how to take over the world and who are doing a very good job of that, and they're called China.
Right, and so then if we ever get Russia in the fold, then we're just looking at the big bad actors in the world as what? China and then the lesser twins of Iran and North Korea. I mean, that's going to solve a huge chunk of our headaches for the past century.
Yeah, you have the totalitarians, North Korea, the totalitarian communists, whatever you want to call them. And then you have the theocrat totalitarians, the Islamic extremists, the jihadists, and there's a coalition of those. That one will probably never be solved, right? That until people stop believing a certain way, that will never be solved. But at least we could be we could be unified against the threat of China and its desire to make its culture, its system, its leaders, in charge of the entire world. That's where we need to get to. Ultimately, what had to happen is Zelensky had to get off this Putin must die. There's only one way to end this war notion. We have to figure out, and I've said, how to end this war with some negotiated settlement. Russia will probably end up with some slice of eastern Russia.
The Donbass.
Donbass and the Donetsk. They probably will. They kept Crimea. If we join forces economically, which makes good sense, this rare earth minerals deal between us all, you tend to not kill people you do business with, right? It's only the Chinese that seem to want to destroy their best customer.
Right. So not to get too nuanced here, but in that trifecta we mentioned with Iran and China and North Korea, here's how I've seen it. Iran is the worst example of an extreme theocracy. China is the worst example that we have of extreme communism still left on planet Earth. And technically, I have seen North Korea as those two put together. It's a theocratic communist state because their supreme leader is still this dude's grandfather, technically, is still the president. And right now, they're just by the order of inheritance filling the chair here on Earth because this ghostly guy, this demigod. What was the original song? Kim Il-sung? Was that the first one?
Yeah. So all we need to think about with regard to North Korea is that they're completely ineffective in terms of an economy. If you fly over it, it's completely dark at night, right?
Oh, that's so bad.
It is a Bronze Age civilization at this point that happens to have and is trying to have nukes.
Do you really think they have nukes? Because the people who are skeptical of them are pretty convincing at times.
Yeah, and I think if they really had them, et cetera, even somebody as ineffective we've been, like the United States, would have done something about that. They can't have nukes. They can't be allowed to have nukes. So I don't worry about North Korea at all. I worry about China. It's just a vassal of China, North Korea, and so has Russia been. Russia has been a tool to fight a proxy war and to drain us, and a supplier of something they need, which is natural resources, oil, gas, and other things like that, and food, wheat. So we have to align. We have to end this war. It's the right thing to do, politically and strategically. The Central European area is like the third or fourth most important area to us in the world. We care mostly about China, and then secondly, the Middle East because of oil, and then Central Europe, in terms of its importance to us, it's really negligible. what we've cared about is the humanitarian aspect, and you have to love the Ukrainians. You have to love how tough they are, how resilient, et cetera. And you have to love anybody, the underdog who's fighting against someone who's trying to oppress them and take them over. Absolutely. But this war does have to end, and somebody has to be the adult in the room.
All right. Tell them about America's Future Series.
May 8th. Check that out on our website. Come see our National Security and Economic Strategy Summit. We have a large group of military, defense, national security, commercial leaders speaking about national and economic security. It's going to be at a Circle T Ranch. You'll have Ross Perot. You'll have a whole host of other folks there. Check that out, and if anybody wants to participate, they can find my email and give me a ring.
Well, I had to look it up last time you said that. Circle T Ranch in Westlake. Is that what we're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
All right, There you go. Just making sure I had the right one because I'd never heard of that before. There you go. David Hamilton, America's Future Series. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
And he's our guy that keeps an eye on what's going on with foreign policy and whatnot. Do you think that we're gonna get an end to the Ukraine war soon? Coming up next, you're going to get a scorecard of what's been going on at the legislative session in Austin, and it's not good. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Well, hey there, all you beautiful Texans. Welcome back to the James Show. News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3. Don't change the channel. We're going to talk about something terribly unpopular, and I'm sorry, but it has to be done. We've got to talk about taxes. I know it's tax season though, and we all live in a world. Well, most of us have to pay taxes somewhat. Well, my next guest is going to help get us through it. Chris Wilbrett back on the James Show, and look, tax season. If you're a CPA, you don't enjoy it because, you're just swamped in work. And, yeah, you make a little bit more money. But, it's tax season. Now the Better Business Bureau has a warning about ghost preparers. What do we need to know about that, Chris?
Well, the ghost preparers are out to file a false tax return to maximize the refund and put that money in their bank account. So they are out to enrich themselves at your expense and create huge headaches for you while you try to clean up the mess.
So this is one of the things that happen from all these data leaks, like when Target gets hacked or some government agency gets hacked or Visa gets hacked. One thing they can do is take your private info and go fill out a tax return on your behalf. And a lot of people don't find out till it's too late. How do they find out?
Well, most of the time when you submit your tax return, the IRS responds and says that a return has already been filed for you. And that's always a big surprise.
Okay, so what's the likelihood if this has happened to you that you're going to get to find out who did the bad tax return and they get punished and you get your money and all that?
Very low. They usually get away with it, unfortunately. Like in 2023, there's over $5 billion in fraudulent tax returns and refunds. So it is big business.
Anything you can do to prevent it or make it less likely to happen to you?
There's two things. The first is when you're going to, is when you do have your own tax return done and you're going to a new firm, to go and ask friends, family, go to the Better Business Bureau website to find established tax preparation services that you can trust that have a great track record in your community. But the main thing you can do is to create a PIN with the IRS, just like with your ATM card. So in order for anybody to file your tax return, they will need your PIN. And without that PIN, the IRS will reject any tax return that a fraudster may be trying to file under your Social Security number.
All right. So I don't do my taxes myself. I have a guy do them for me. Is there anything I need to do, or can I just assume he's on top of it?
Well, they can assist you in setting it up, but basically you go to the IRS website and you request the form. You take the form, you fill it out to request and set up your PIN. You submit it, and then it'll be in place, and then you give that to your tax preparer.
So, what about the tax cuts that are expected to expire at the end of the year? Do you foresee? I know it's an impossible question for you to nail down, but do you think they'll be extended?
I think a lot of it will be extended, and there will be some changes along the way. But with Trump in the White House and Republicans controlling Congress, I think most of the provisions of the Tax Cut and Job Act from 2017 will be extended.
So let's talk about the point to where you actually need to itemize. At what point does someone need to not take the standard deduction and the easy way out and actually go through and keep up with all their receipts and start itemizing their deductions? Do you have a rule of thumb for that, Chris?
Well, with the current tax law, the state and local taxes cap is $10,000. So what that means is if your property taxes are less than $10,000, you can have some room to itemize. But if your property taxes, for example, were over $10,000 a year, then at that point you would be in a position where you really there'd be no benefit to itemizing.
All right.
So,
any other big changes this year compared to years past when preparing your taxes, Chris?
Well, no big changes. Just, again, the fraudsters are out there in force. They're using everything from promises of cheap tax preparation through websites and pop-up storefronts to try to trick people into getting their information. And don't fall for any of the texts, emails, or phone calls for people calling you and trying to scare you into responding and giving them your information, because the IRS will never contact you by text, email, or phone. They'll only contact you by mail. So if anything comes through one of those three mediums other than the mail, automatically know it's fraud.
All right, Chris Wilbert, how do we find your work outside of WBAP?
Just our website, echelonfinancial.com.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You know, it's terrible that you're doing a thing that you don't want to do anyway. Go out and pay taxes. How do I find out how much of my hard-earned money isn't going to go to my family and my children? It's going to have to go to D.C. And then on top of that, people are trying to scam you in the middle of this terrible process. They're just the lowest of the low tax fraud people. Your thoughts, 800-288-9227, 800-288-9227. Coming up next, I'm going to have to dig through my emails here because I've had a lot of response on both the storyline of the Neiman Marcus. You know, it's the flagship in downtown Dallas was announced that it was going to close, and now there seems to be a rush by Dallas leaders to spend your tax money to save it. That, and I have a couple of additions to the rich man, poor man list. If you want to get your thoughts in, you can either call 800-288-9227. You can send me a Facebook message, is really where I'm getting the most messages from, or email james@wbap.com. Yeah, the IRS won't email you. Social Security won't email you, but you can email me, james@wbap.com. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820 WBAP, now on FM at 93.3.